I was sitting in my garden on a beautiful spring morning across from my son-in-law Daniel at the garden table. He was talking cheerfully about renovations, sipping his tea, completely relaxed. I reached for the book I'd left outside the night before, trying to enjoy the moment. A folded piece of paper fell into my lap. I picked it up, curious, unfolded it carefully under the table so Daniel wouldn't see. Do not trust Daniel. I stared at those 4 words and felt my heart stop. My name is Elena Martinez. I'm 68 years old and I've lived in this house for 40 years. Every flower in this garden, every stone on this path, every memory between these walls, mine. I built this life with my own 2 hands, but in the space of just 1 year, everything I'd worked for was about to be stolen by someone I'd invited in. When my daughter Maria and her husband Daniel hit hard times, I did what any loving mother would do. I opened my door. Just for a while, they said. Just until they got back on their feet. But a while became a year. No rent, no savings plan, no sign of leaving. Daniel had grown comfortable. Too comfortable. And I was about to discover that some house guests don't just overstay their welcome. They plan to take everything. It started with that warning from a stranger, a mysterious note on a crumpled piece of paper, 4 words that changed everything. But who wrote it? And how did they know what Daniel was planning? This is my story, the story of how I almost lost my home, my health, and my life, and how someone I never expected risked everything to save me. Let me take you back to where it all began, a perfect spring morning in my garden, and the moment I found that first note. I looked up slowly from the note, my hand trembling slightly. Daniel was still sitting across from me, smiling, talking about his plans for the house. My house. When everything is in our name, he said casually, gesturing toward the upstairs windows, we'll finally fix up those bedrooms, maybe add a bathroom. It'll be so much better. In our name, not your name, not even the family home. Our name. I felt something cold settle in my chest. And once your mom is settled somewhere with proper care, he continued, not even looking at me, just staring at the house like he was already calculating costs, it'll be easier to make all the big decisions, without worrying about complications. Somewhere with proper care, like I wasn't sitting right there, like I was already gone. I folded the note quickly and slipped it into my pocket. My mind was racing. Who could have written this? And why? Elena? Daniel's voice cut through my thoughts. He was looking at me now, that concerned expression he'd perfected over the past year. Are you okay? You look pale. I'm fine, I said quickly. Too quickly. You sure? Maybe you should go lie down. You've been looking tired lately. He stood up, reaching for my arm. Come on, let me help you inside. I pulled away gently. I said I'm fine, Daniel. I just want to sit here a bit longer. He hesitated, and for just a second I saw something flicker across his face. Annoyance? Frustration? It was gone so fast I couldn't be sure. All right, he said, sitting back down. But you really should take it easy. You know what the doctor said about your condition? My condition. That was another thing. For months now, Daniel had been the one taking me to doctor appointments, the one picking up my medications, the one explaining my symptoms to Maria when I felt too tired or confused to explain them myself. But here's the thing. I never felt confused until Daniel started helping. I watched him now, sipping his tea, scrolling through his phone with that same relaxed smile, and I thought about that note in my pocket. Do not trust Daniel. What if it was true? What if someone was trying to warn me? I needed to figure out who wrote it, and I needed to do it without Daniel knowing I was suspicious. I think I'll do some gardening, I said, standing up. The roses need deadheading. You sure you're up for it? Daniel asked, not looking up from his phone. I've been gardening for 40 years, Daniel. I think I can manage some roses. This time, I definitely saw the annoyance. Suit yourself, he muttered. I walked to my rose bushes, my mind spinning. Someone knew something. Someone was watching. Someone was trying to help me. But who? And what exactly did they know about Daniel? I knelt down by the roses, pulling on my gardening gloves, and that's when I felt it. Another piece of paper, folded small, tucked inside the left glove. My heart hammered as I palmed it, making sure Daniel couldn't see from where he sat. I pretended to examine a rose stem while I carefully unfolded the note. He made you sick. I stopped breathing. 3 words that made everything suddenly, terribly clear. The dizzy spells, the confusion, the exhaustion that came out of nowhere, the collapse I'd had 3 weeks ago that landed me in the emergency room. Daniel had been the one who made my tea that afternoon. Daniel had been the one who insisted I drink it. "It'll help you feel better," he'd said. I felt better for about 20 minutes. Then I couldn't stand up. Then everything went black. I looked back at the garden table. Daniel was still on his phone, completely unaware that I'd just found a second note. 2 notes, 2 warnings, both hidden where only I would find them. Someone was watching my house. Someone knew what Daniel was doing. Someone was trying to save my life. I needed to find out who, and I needed to find out fast, because if these notes were telling the truth, I was running out of time. Over the next 3 days, I found 5 more notes. 1 in my apron pocket when I went to make breakfast, 1 tucked under the cushion of my favorite patio chair, 1 inside the drawer where I kept my gardening tools, 1 between the pages of my diary, the one I sometimes wrote in outside on quiet mornings, and 1 folded into the handle of my watering can. Each note said something different, but they all pointed to the same terrifying truth. "Don't drink what he gives you." I heard him talking. "He wants the house. You're not safe. Check your medicine." I became obsessed. Every time I went outside, I searched for new notes. Every time Daniel left the house, I checked my belongings, my garden, my spaces. And every time, I found something new. Someone was leaving me a trail of breadcrumbs. Someone was trying to wake me up to what was happening right under my nose. But I still had no idea who. At night, I started lying awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Daniel and Maria talking in the next room. Sometimes their voices were too quiet to hear, but sometimes I caught fragments. "She's getting worse," Daniel would say. "Maybe we should call the doctor again," Maria would reply, sounding worried. "I've already talked to him. He thinks it might be time to consider other options." Other options. What did that mean? A nursing home? Assisted living? Or something worse? I pulled the blanket tighter around myself, my heart pounding in the darkness. During the day, I started paying closer attention to everything Daniel did. The way he watched me, the way he hovered whenever I took my medication, the way he always insisted on making my evening tea. "Here you go, Elena," he'd say with that smile. "Your favorite, chamomile with honey." And I'd take it, because what else could I do? If I refused, he'd know I was suspicious. If he knew I was suspicious, what would he do? So I'd take the cup, wait until he left the room, and pour it into the plant by the window. That poor ficus was probably getting more medicated than I was, but I was playing a dangerous game, and I knew it. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen when Daniel came in carrying a small paper bag from the pharmacy. "Got your refills," he said cheerfully, setting the bag on the counter. "The pharmacist said to take 2 of the blue ones twice a day now. Doctor's orders." I nodded, trying to look grateful. But inside, alarm bells were screaming. I'd never taken blue pills before. My prescriptions were white tablets and pink capsules. Nothing blue. After Daniel left, I opened the bag with shaking hands. Inside were 3 medication bottles. I recognized 2 of them, my blood pressure medication and my vitamins. But the 3rd bottle was new. The label said it was prescribed by Dr. Harrison, my regular doctor. But the name of the medication was nothing I'd ever heard of. I grabbed my phone and looked it up. What I found made my blood run cold. It was a sedative, a strong one, the kind used for severe anxiety and insomnia. Side effects included dizziness, confusion, memory problems, and, if taken in high doses over time, could cause loss of consciousness. Dr. Harrison had never prescribed this. I'd never asked for it. I didn't have anxiety or insomnia, but Daniel had picked it up anyway, and he'd told me the doctor wanted me to take 2 pills twice a day. That's when I understood. The notes weren't exaggerating. Daniel wasn't just planning to take my house. He was actively trying to make me incapable of stopping him. If I took those pills like he said, I'd be confused, dizzy, unable to think clearly. I'd seem incompetent, unfit to manage my own affairs. Maria would see her mother deteriorating and believe that Daniel was right, that I needed to be somewhere with proper care. And once I was gone, Daniel would have exactly what he wanted: control of the house, control of everything. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I needed proof. I needed evidence. But more than anything, I needed to know who was leaving these notes, because that person might be the only one who could help me prove what Daniel was doing. That evening, I made a decision. I would stay outside in the garden after dark, hidden, watching, waiting. If someone was leaving notes in my private spaces, my gloves, my books, my chair, they had to be coming at night when no one was watching, and tonight I was going to catch them. I told Maria I was tired and going to bed early. I even made a show of taking the new blue pills in front of Daniel, though I palmed them and spit them out the moment I was alone. Then I waited until the house was quiet, until I heard Daniel and Maria go to their room, until I was sure they were asleep. And then, moving as quietly as my old bones would allow, I crept downstairs and slipped out into the garden. The night was cool, dark. The only light came from the moon and the distant street lamps. I positioned myself behind the large hedge near the fence, where I had a clear view of my garden table, my chair, and the area where I kept my gardening tools. And I waited. Minutes felt like hours. My legs ached. My back was stiff. I was about to give up when I heard it, a rustling sound, coming from the fence. I held my breath, watching, and then I saw it. A small shadow squeezing through a gap in the wooden fence boards, moving quickly, quietly toward my garden table. The shadow reached my book, the one I'd left there on purpose, and slipped something between the pages. My heart was racing. This was it. This was my mysterious messenger. I stepped out from behind the hedge. "Wait," I called softly. The shadow froze, then bolted toward the fence. "Please," I said louder now. "Don't go. I won't hurt you. I just want to talk." The shadow stopped, turned slowly, and that's when I saw him. A boy, maybe 10 years old, wearing a dark hoodie and sneakers. His eyes were wide with fear, caught in the moonlight. We stood there staring at each other across my garden. This child who'd been trying to save my life. This stranger who somehow knew my darkest secret. "Who are you?" I whispered. The boy didn't answer, but he didn't run either. And in that moment, I knew, whatever came next, I wasn't alone anymore. "Please," I said gently, taking a small step forward. "I'm not angry, I promise. I need to know. How do you know about Daniel? What did you see?" The boy looked at the fence, then back at me. He was deciding whether to trust me. "You live next door, don't you?" I asked softly. "I've seen you in your backyard sometimes." He nodded slowly, still didn't speak. "What's your name?" "Max," he finally said. His voice was quiet, scared. "Max Peterson." "Max." I smiled, trying to put him at ease. "I'm Elena, but I think you already know that." He nodded again. "Max, those notes you've been leaving me, they're very serious. They say that Daniel is trying to hurt me, that he made me sick." I kept my voice calm, even though my heart was hammering. "How do you know that?" Max shifted his weight from foot to foot, looking uncomfortable. "I wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't supposed to hear." "Hear what?" "Him, Daniel, on the phone." Max's words came out in a rush now, like a dam breaking. "I was playing in my backyard. You know, being a secret agent. I like to sneak through the yard sometimes, pretending I'm on a mission. My mom doesn't know. She'd be mad if she found out." "It's okay," I said. "You're not in trouble. Just tell me what you heard." Max took a deep breath. "There's a broken board in the fence between your yard and mine. I can squeeze through it. Sometimes I hide behind your shed or behind the big plants. Just exploring, you know?" I nodded, encouraging him to continue. "About a week ago, maybe more, I was behind your shed, and Daniel came outside. He was on his phone. I didn't want him to see me, so I stayed hidden. And then I heard what he was saying." "What did he say, Max?" The boy's voice dropped to almost a whisper. He said, "She won't question the stronger tea." And then he laughed. Not like a happy laugh, like a mean laugh. My stomach turned cold. "He said other stuff too," Max continued. "He said, once she's weak enough, we'll finish the paperwork. And he said, everyone will think it's her condition. He kept saying the house a lot. Like, when the house is finally ours and once we have control of the property." I felt dizzy. This was real. This was all terrifyingly real. "That was a week ago?" I asked. Max nodded. "Yeah, and then a few days later, I saw the ambulance come to your house. I saw them take you out on a stretcher, and I knew it was because of what Daniel did." "But why didn't you tell your parents? Why didn't you call the police?" Max looked down at his feet. "Because I wasn't supposed to be there. I sneak through yards all the time. My mom would ground me forever if she found out. And I didn't know if anyone would believe me. I'm just a kid. What if they thought I made it up?" He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. "But I knew it was true. I knew Daniel hurt you. So I thought, maybe I could warn you instead, without getting in trouble, without anyone knowing it was me." I felt my own eyes welling up. This brave, terrified little boy had been trying to save me, all while being too scared to ask for help himself. "You did the right thing, Max," I said firmly. "You've been so brave. Those notes, they opened my eyes. They made me start paying attention. You might have saved my life." He wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "Really? Really?" Max looked relieved, but then his expression changed to worry. "But what are you going to do now? If Daniel finds out, you know—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I need your help. Can you remember exactly what else Daniel said on that phone call? Every detail matters." Max thought hard, his face scrunched up in concentration. "He said something about making sure you were dependent. That word, dependent. I remember because I had to look it up later, and he said, 'Oh,' he said, 'the doctor's signature won't be hard to get.' What does that mean?" My blood ran cold. Forging medical documents. Daniel was planning to forge my doctor's signature to make it look like I was medically unfit. "And he mentioned someone named Maria a lot," Max added. He kept saying, "Maria will understand, and Maria will see that it's for the best." "Is that your daughter?" "Yes," I said quietly. "That's my daughter, his wife. He said she'd agree to put you in a home once she saw how bad you were getting." There it was, the full picture. Daniel was systematically making me appear incompetent, forging medical documents, and manipulating my own daughter into thinking I needed to be institutionalized. All so he could take my house. "Max," I said carefully, "would you be willing to tell someone else what you heard? An adult who could help?" He looked scared again. "Like who?" "I don't know yet. But if we're going to stop Daniel, we need more than just notes. We need witnesses. We need proof." Max bit his lip, thinking, What if I heard him again? What if I recorded it this time? I blinked. "Record it?" "Yeah, on my phone. My mom gave me an old phone for emergencies. I could hide, and if he comes outside talking on the phone again, I could record what he says. That would be proof, right?" It was risky. It put Max in potential danger. But he was right. A recording would be undeniable proof. "Max, I can't ask you to do something dangerous." "You're not asking," he said, suddenly looking much older than 10. "I'm offering. Daniel's a bad guy. Bad guys shouldn't win." I looked at this child, this unexpected hero in my story, and made a decision. Okay, but we do this carefully. You don't take any risks. If Daniel sees you or suspects anything, you run home immediately. Understand? "I'm good at being sneaky," Max said with a small smile. "I've been practicing for years." "And Max, thank you for everything, for the notes, for telling me the truth, for being brave when you were scared." He shrugged, embarrassed. "Secret agents protect people. That's what we do." I smiled despite everything. "Well, Agent Max, we have a mission. We need to gather evidence, and we need to do it fast, because I have a feeling Daniel is running out of patience." "What makes you think that?" I thought about the new medication, the increased dosage Daniel had told me to take, the way he'd been pushing harder lately for decisions about my care. "Because I stopped taking his tea," I said. "I stopped taking the pills he gives me. I've been pretending, but I'm getting clearer, stronger. Daniel's going to notice soon, and when he does—" "He'll know you're onto him," Max finished. "Exactly." We stood there in my moonlit garden, an unlikely pair of conspirators, an old woman and a child plotting to catch a predator. "Same time tomorrow night?" Max asked. "Same time tomorrow night. But Max, be careful. Don't do anything that puts you in danger. If you see or hear anything important, leave me a note like before. We'll figure this out together." Max nodded and started toward the fence. Then he stopped and turned back. "Mrs. Martinez?" "Yes?" "You're going to be okay. We're going to stop him." And with that, he slipped through the broken fence board and disappeared into his own yard. I stood alone in my garden, surrounded by my roses and my secrets. For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt since Daniel and Maria moved in. Hope. But I also felt something else, something darker. Fear. Because now that I knew the truth, now that I had someone on my side, the stakes were even higher. Daniel had invested a year into his plan. He'd poisoned me, manipulated my daughter, forged documents. He'd gone too far to back down now. And if he found out that I knew— I looked up at the house, at the window of the guest room where Daniel and Maria slept. The light was still off. They had no idea I'd been outside. No idea I'd just met with their neighbor's son. No idea their plan was unraveling. I had to keep it that way, at least until I had enough proof to expose Daniel for what he really was. I crept back inside, moving as silently as I could, back up the stairs, back into my room, back into bed. But I didn't sleep that night. I lay there in the darkness, thinking about everything Max had told me, about Daniel's phone call, about his plan to get my doctor's signature, about how he'd convinced himself that Maria would go along with putting me in a home. And I thought about my daughter, my sweet Maria, who had no idea she'd married a monster. How was I going to tell her? How could I prove to her that the man she loved, the man she'd chosen to spend her life with, was systematically destroying her mother? I'd need more than Max's testimony. I'd need more than notes in the garden. I'd need concrete, undeniable evidence. And I knew exactly where to start looking. Tomorrow, while Daniel was out, I would search his things, his computer, his papers, his phone if I could get to it. Somewhere, there had to be proof of what he was planning. The forged documents, the research on how to declare someone mentally incompetent, something that would convince Maria and, if necessary, the police that Daniel was dangerous. But for now, I just had to survive one more day. One more day of pretending. One more day of playing the confused, helpless old woman that Daniel wanted me to be. One more day of drinking his tea and watching him smile, because tomorrow I would start fighting back. The next morning came too slowly and too fast at the same time. I forced myself out of bed, forced myself to act normal. I shuffled to the kitchen, moving slowly like I had been lately, the way Daniel expected me to move. "Morning, Elena," Daniel said cheerfully. He was already at the stove making breakfast. "I'm making eggs. Want some?" "That sounds lovely," I said, my voice deliberately weak. He smiled and turned back to the stove. I watched him carefully. The way he moved around my kitchen like he owned it. The way he'd rearrange my cabinets to make things easier for you. The way he controlled everything, the food, the medication, the household. "Here you go," he said, setting a plate in front of me, "and your morning pills." There they were, the white tablet, the pink capsule, and the blue pill. "Thank you, dear," I said. I picked up each pill slowly, making a show of struggling with the water glass. Daniel watched me take them, nodding with satisfaction. "Good. The doctor says the blue ones are really going to help with your confusion." "What confusion?" I wanted to scream. "I'm not confused. You're making me confused." But instead, I just smiled weakly and said, "I hope so." "Maria had to leave early for work," Daniel said, sitting down across from me with his own plate. "She's worried about you, you know. We both are." "I know," I said softly. "You've both been so good to me." The words tasted like poison in my mouth. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned slightly. "I have to run some errands this morning. Will you be okay here alone for a few hours?" This was it. This was my chance. "Of course," I said. "I'll just rest, maybe do a little reading in the garden." "Don't overdo it," he said, standing up. "Remember what happened last time you pushed yourself too hard." "Last time you poisoned me, you mean? I'll be careful," I promised. 20 minutes later, Daniel left. I watched from the window as his car pulled out of the driveway and disappeared down the street. The moment he was gone, I moved fast. The pills I'd supposedly taken were already in my pocket. I'd palmed them like I'd been doing for days now. I flushed them down the toilet and got to work. I started with Daniel's briefcase. He kept it in the guest room, usually locked. But I'd watched him open it before, memorized the combination. 3 tries and I had it open. Inside were folders, lots of folders. My hands shook as I pulled them out one by one. The first folder made my heart sink. It was labeled Property Transfer Documents. Inside were forms, partially filled out, for transferring the deed of my house. My signature line was blank, but there was a notary seal already stamped at the bottom. A blank notarized document. All they'd need was my signature, or a forged version of it. The second folder was worse. Medical Records, Elena Martinez. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside were doctors' reports I'd never seen, descriptions of symptoms I'd never had, notes about increasing cognitive decline and inability to manage daily tasks, and recommendation for full-time supervised care. None of it was real. None of it was from my actual doctor. But it all had Dr. Harrison's signature at the bottom, forged signatures, just like Max had heard Daniel say. The third folder made me want to be sick. It was labeled Care Facilities Options. Inside were brochures for nursing homes, not the nice kind where people go to play bingo and enjoy their retirement, the kind with locked doors and heavy medication protocols, the kind where people go and never leave. Daniel had circled several facilities, made notes in the margins. Far enough away that Maria won't visit often. Accepts patients with diminished capacity. Minimal family consultation required. He was planning to put me somewhere I couldn't escape, somewhere I couldn't tell anyone the truth. I took pictures of everything with my phone, every document, every note, every forged signature. My hands were shaking so badly I had to take some photos twice to make sure they were clear. Then I moved to his computer. It was a laptop sitting on the desk in the corner. I opened it, expecting to need a password, but it opened right away. Daniel was apparently confident enough that he didn't bother locking it. Big mistake. I opened his email first, scrolled through weeks of messages, and there it was, a thread between Daniel and someone named Rick Chen. The subject line said, Property Consultation. I clicked it open and started reading. Rick, I need your advice on something. Hypothetically, if someone owned a property but became mentally incompetent, What's the legal process for the next of kin to take control? Rick's response was detailed, too detailed. He explained power of attorney, competency hearings, medical documentation requirements, and how family members could petition for guardianship. Daniel's next email made me feel sick. What if the medical documentation already exists, asking for a friend? There were more emails, more hypothetical questions. Daniel was building a roadmap for stealing my house, step by step, and leaving me powerless to stop him. But then I found something even more damning. An email to someone named Patricia Vance. The subject line, inheritance planning. Patricia, thanks for taking my call yesterday. As discussed, I want to make sure everything is in order when my mother-in-law passes. She's declining rapidly, and I want to ensure the property transfer goes smoothly. My wife is the only heir, but I need to understand how to manage the estate efficiently, particularly if there are complications. Complications. He meant if I tried to fight back, if I tried to prove I wasn't actually incompetent. Patricia's response, the documents you sent show clear cognitive decline. If this progresses, you and your wife should consider getting power of attorney immediately. Once that's in place, you can make all necessary decisions on her behalf, including property transfers, financial management, and medical care. I've attached some forms to expedite the process. Forms that Daniel had downloaded. Forms that were probably in that briefcase, waiting for the right moment. I took pictures of every email, every incriminating word. Then I checked his browser history, searches for how to declare someone mentally incompetent, forging medical signatures, transferring property from elderly relatives, cost of sedatives, what drugs cause confusion in elderly patients. He'd researched it all, planned it all, and I had proof of every single search. I was about to close the laptop when I noticed a folder on the desktop labeled VM Private. VM, my initials. Victoria Martinez, my full name. I opened it. Inside were dozens of files, audio recordings, all dated over the past 6 months. I clicked on the first one. It was me, my voice. But I sounded terrible, slurred, confused, disoriented. I can't remember where I put the keys. It's okay, Elena, Daniel's voice said soothingly. Don't worry about it. Just rest. But I need to call someone. No, you don't need to call anyone. I've got everything handled. He'd been recording me, recording my worst moments, the moments right after he'd drugged me, to use as evidence that I was incompetent. I clicked through more files, more recordings. Each one showed me at my worst. Confused, disoriented, unable to complete simple tasks. This was his insurance policy. If anyone questioned whether I was really declining, he had hours of audio proof. Except none of it was real. It was all manufactured, all caused by whatever he'd been putting in my tea and pills. I copied everything to my phone, every file, every email, every search. I had enough evidence now to bury Daniel. But I needed more than just evidence. I needed my daughter to believe me. I closed the laptop and put everything back exactly as I'd found it. Then I went to the guest room closet where I knew Daniel kept some of his clothes and personal items. In the back, behind a stack of sweaters, I found a small lockbox. I tried to open it, but this one actually had a real lock. I searched the room for a key, checking drawers, pockets, under the mattress. Nothing. I was about to give up when I remembered something. Daniel wore a keychain with several small keys on it. He always kept it in his pocket, but sometimes, when he changed clothes, he'd leave it on the dresser for a moment. I checked the dresser, and there it was, his keys. I tried 3 different small keys before one finally turned the lock. The box opened. Inside was cash, a lot of cash, thousands of dollars in neat stacks, and underneath the cash was a notebook. I pulled it out and opened it. It was a ledger, a record of payments. Dr. Harrison's signature sample, $500. Pharmacy override, $200. Notary seal, $300. Daniel had been paying people off, bribing them to help him forge documents, get fake medications, create false medical records. At the bottom of the notebook was a timeline. Week 1-8, establish baseline confusion with low-dose sedatives. Week 9-12, increase dosage, document cognitive decline. Week 13-16, major incident, collapse, ER visit, establish medical emergency. Week 17-20, power of attorney, competency hearing prep. Week 21, transfer property, place in care facility. We were at week 18. I had less than 3 weeks before Daniel planned to finalize everything. I took pictures of the notebook, the cash, everything in the box. Then I put it all back, locked it, and returned the keys to the dresser. My phone was full of evidence now. Pictures, screenshots, documents, everything I needed to prove what Daniel was doing. But I still had one more thing to check. My actual medications, the ones prescribed by my real doctor. I went to the bathroom and opened the medicine cabinet. There were my prescriptions in their labeled bottles. I opened each one and compared the pills inside to the description on the label. None of them matched. The bottle labeled blood pressure medication contained small yellow pills instead of the white tablets I was supposed to take. The bottle labeled vitamin D contained capsules that were too large and the wrong color. And the bottle labeled calcium supplement contained those blue sedatives Daniel had been giving me. He'd switched everything, every single medication. For months, I'd been taking whatever Daniel wanted me to take, not what my doctor had prescribed. I took pictures of all of it, the bottles, the pills, the labels that didn't match the contents. Then I heard it, the sound that made my blood freeze, a car door slamming outside. Daniel was back. I rushed to put everything away, my heart hammering in my chest. The pill bottles back in the cabinet, the briefcase relocked, the keys back on the dresser, the lockbox back in the closet. I made it to my bedroom just as I heard the front door open. "Elena?" Daniel called out. "I'm back." I took a breath, steadied myself, and called back in my weakest voice, "I'm upstairs, dear, just resting." "Good," he said. "That's good." I sat on my bed, my phone clutched in my hand, filled with evidence that could destroy Daniel's entire plan. But evidence wasn't enough. I still needed to get Maria to believe me. I needed her to see the truth about the man she'd married, and I had an idea of exactly how to do that. Tonight, when Maria came home from work, I would tell her I wasn't feeling well, that I wanted to see my real doctor, not just let Daniel take me, that I wanted her to come with me. And once we were at Dr. Harrison's office, away from Daniel, I would show her everything. The forged medical records with her doctor's signature, the fake medications, the emails planning my institutionalization, the timeline counting down to when they'd take my house. Everything. Maria loved me. I had to believe that. And once she saw the proof, once she understood what Daniel had been doing, she would help me stop him. She had to. Because if she didn't believe me, if she chose Daniel over the evidence, then I would be out of options. And Daniel would win. That evening felt like the longest of my life. I sat in the living room pretending to watch television while Daniel made dinner in the kitchen. Every few minutes he'd glance over at me with that concerned expression, that caring mask he wore so well. "You seem quiet tonight," he said, bringing me a cup of tea. "Everything okay?" I looked at the tea, at his hand holding it out to me, at the smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Actually," I said slowly, "I'm not feeling well. I think I need to see Dr. Harrison." Daniel's smile faltered for just a second. "You just saw him 2 weeks ago." "That was with you. I want to see him myself, with Maria." "Elena, that doesn't make sense. I can take you tomorrow if—" "No." I kept my voice firm. "I want Maria to come with me. I need to talk to the doctor about some things. Personal things." Daniel's jaw tightened. "What kind of personal things?" "That's between me and my doctor." We stared at each other. The mask was slipping now. I could see the calculation in his eyes, the anger barely contained. "Fine," he said tersely. "I'll tell Maria when she gets home." He turned and walked back to the kitchen, leaving the tea on the side table. I didn't touch it. An hour later, Maria came home. She looked tired, stressed from her long day at work. She hugged me, then went to find Daniel in the kitchen. I could hear them talking. Couldn't make out the words, but I could hear the tone. Daniel's voice low and urgent, Maria's confused. Then they both came into the living room. "Mom," Maria said, sitting beside me on the couch, "Daniel says you want to see Dr. Harrison. Is something wrong?" I took her hand, looked into her eyes, my daughter's eyes. "I need to talk to him about my medications," I said carefully. "Some things aren't adding up. I want you to come with me. Tomorrow morning, if possible." Maria frowned. "What things aren't adding up?" "I'd rather discuss it with the doctor first. But Maria," I squeezed her hand, "I need you there. Please." Something in my voice must have reached her because she nodded. "Okay, of course, Mom. I'll take the morning off work. We'll go first thing." "Thank you, sweetheart." I glanced at Daniel. He was standing by the doorway, his face carefully neutral now, but his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. He knew something was wrong. He just didn't know how much I'd discovered. "I'm going to bed early," I said, standing up carefully. "I'm very tired." "Let me help you," Daniel said, moving toward me. "I can manage," I said quickly, maybe too quickly. Maria gave me a concerned look. "Are you sure you're okay, Mom?" "I'm fine, honey. Just tired. I'll see you in the morning." I went upstairs, feeling Daniel's eyes boring into my back the entire way. Once in my room, I locked the door, something I'd never done before in my own house. But tonight, I didn't feel safe. I lay in bed, fully clothed, my phone hidden under my pillow with all the evidence safely backed up to the cloud, just in case. The hours crawled by. I heard Maria and Daniel go to their room, heard their muffled voices through the wall. Daniel's tone was sharp, Maria's soothing. They were arguing about something. About me, probably. Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway. They stopped outside my door. The doorknob turned, rattled against the lock. "Elena?" Daniel's voice soft through the door. "Are you awake?" I held my breath. Didn't answer. Another rattle of the doorknob. Then silence. Then footsteps walking away. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning came with gray skies and drizzling rain. Perfect weather for what was about to happen. Maria knocked on my door at 8. "Mom, ready to go?" I opened the door. Maria was dressed for work. She'd clearly planned to go to the office after the appointment. Daniel was behind her, also dressed to leave. "I'm coming too," he announced. "That's not necessary," I said. "Elena, I've been managing your care for months. I should be there." "Mom wants me there," Maria said gently. "Maybe you should sit this one out, honey. Let us have some mother-daughter time." Daniel's eyes flashed with anger, but he forced a smile. "Of course, whatever Elena wants." But I saw the threat in his eyes, the warning. He knew. He knew I was planning something. Maria drove us to Dr. Harrison's office in the rain. She tried to make small talk, but I could barely respond. My mind was racing, planning what I would say, how I would show her everything. When we arrived, the receptionist greeted us warmly. "Mrs. Martinez, we weren't expecting you today. Do you have an appointment?" "No, but it's urgent," Maria explained. "Is Dr. Harrison available?" "Let me check." The receptionist disappeared into the back. A few minutes later, Dr. Harrison himself came out. He was in his 60s, kind-faced, someone I'd trusted for 20 years. "Elena," he said with genuine concern, "come on back. Maria, you too." We followed him to his office. He closed the door and sat down behind his desk. "What's going on?" he asked. "You look worried." This was it, the moment everything would change. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. "Dr. Harrison," I said, "I need to show you something, and I need you to tell me if you wrote these medical reports." I showed him the photos of the forged documents, the ones that had his signature, the ones claiming I had severe cognitive decline. His face went pale as he read through them. "Elena," he said quietly. "I never wrote these. This isn't my handwriting. This isn't even the letterhead we use anymore." "I know," I said. "Mom, what is this?" Maria asked, confused. I turned to my daughter, looked into her eyes, and told her everything. "Daniel has been poisoning me. He's been switching my medications with sedatives to make me appear confused and incompetent. He's forged medical documents to support claiming that I can't take care of myself. He's been planning to have me declared mentally unfit so he can take control of my house." Maria stared at me. "Mom, that's insane. Daniel wouldn't—" "Look at the evidence," I said, showing her my phone. Photos of the forged documents, his emails planning everything, his search history researching how to declare someone incompetent, a ledger showing payments he made to people to help him fake medical records, audio recordings he made of me while I was drugged, a timeline counting down to when he'd put me in a nursing home and transfer the property. Dr. Harrison was looking at the photos too, his expression growing darker with each image. "And there's more," I continued, pulling out the pill bottles I'd brought with me. "These are supposed to be my blood pressure medication, my vitamins, my calcium supplement, but look at what's actually inside them." I opened each bottle and poured out the pills. Dr. Harrison examined them. "These aren't what I prescribed. These are sedatives, strong ones." Maria was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she scrolled through the evidence on my phone. "There's a boy next door," I said softly. "Max. He overheard Daniel on the phone planning all of this. He's been leaving me notes, trying to warn me. That's how I found out." "Mom," Maria whispered. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "I know, sweetheart. He fooled both of us. He made us think he was helping, that he cared. But he was just waiting for the right moment to take everything." Dr. Harrison stood up. "This is elder abuse, financial exploitation, possibly attempted murder depending on the dosages. We need to call the police. Right now." Maria looked up at me, her face devastated. "I brought him into your home. I married him. Oh God, Mom, I'm so sorry." I pulled her close. "You didn't know. He's a very good liar." "I'll call the police," Dr. Harrison said, reaching for his phone. "And I'll provide documentation that these medical records are forgeries and that your actual health is fine." Maria suddenly grabbed my arm. "Mom, if we're calling the police, Daniel's at the house, alone. What if he realizes what's happening? What if he runs?" My blood went cold. She was right. Once Daniel realized we weren't coming back, that I'd exposed everything, he might disappear, take whatever cash he had left, and vanish. "We need to get back there," I said, "before he knows." Dr. Harrison was already on the phone with the police, explaining the situation. "They're sending officers to your house now," he said. "They want you to stay here until they secure the scene." But Maria was already standing up. "I'm not letting him get away with this. That's my mother he tried to hurt. My mother." "Maria, wait," I started. But she was already out the door, running for the car. I followed as fast as I could, Dr. Harrison close behind. "Maria, please," I called. "Let the police handle it." "He's in my mother's house," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "The house he tried to steal. I'm not waiting." We got in the car. Maria drove fast, maybe too fast, back toward my home, back toward Daniel. "The police should be there any minute," Dr. Harrison said from the back seat where he'd insisted on coming. "Don't do anything rash." But I could see the determination in Maria's face, the fury. She'd trusted Daniel, loved him, and he'd betrayed her in the worst possible way. When we pulled up to my house, there were no police cars yet. Daniel's car was still in the driveway. "We should wait," I said, but Maria was already out of the car, striding toward the front door. "Maria," I called, following her. She threw open the door. "Daniel!" I heard movement upstairs. Then Daniel appeared at the top of the stairs, looking down at us. And in that moment, seeing Maria's face, seeing me beside her, he knew. He knew it was over. "Maria," he said carefully. "Let me explain." "Explain?" Maria's voice was ice. "Explain how you've been poisoning my mother. Explain the forged documents, the fake medications, the plan to steal her house." Daniel's face hardened. The mask finally fell away completely. "That house should be ours," he said coldly. "We've been living here for a year, taking care of her, dealing with her. We deserve it." "We were guests," Maria shouted. "She opened her home to us out of love, and you repaid her by trying to kill her." "I wasn't trying to kill her," Daniel said, descending the stairs slowly. "Just make her manageable. Once she was in a care facility, the house would naturally pass to you, to us. I was doing this for our future." "Our future?" Maria looked at him like she'd never seen him before. "You were doing this for yourself. You're a monster." Daniel took another step down, and I saw something in his hand, a knife from the kitchen. "Maria," I said quietly, "get behind me." But Maria didn't move. She stood between me and Daniel, protecting me like I'd once protected her. "Put the knife down," she said. "I can't do that," Daniel replied, "because you're going to call the police, and I'm not going to prison, not when I was this close." "The police are already on their way," Dr. Harrison said from behind us. "It's over, Daniel." Daniel's eyes darted between all of us, calculating, desperate. "Then I guess," he said softly, "I have nothing left to lose." And he lunged down the remaining stairs, straight toward us. Everything happened so fast. Daniel came down the stairs, knife raised. Maria screamed. Dr. Harrison pulled me backward, and then the front door burst open behind us. "Police! Drop the weapon!" 2 officers rushed in, guns drawn. Daniel froze on the bottom step, knife still in his hand. "Drop it now!" the officer shouted again. For a moment, I thought Daniel might actually try to fight. His eyes were wild, desperate. But then he saw the guns pointed at him, and his hand opened. The knife clattered to the floor. The officers moved in immediately, forcing Daniel to the ground, handcuffing him. He didn't resist. He just lay there, face pressed against the floor of my entryway. My floor, in my house. The house he'd tried to steal. "Are you folks all right?" one of the officers asked, turning to us. Maria was shaking. I put my arm around her and we held each other up. "We're okay," I managed to say. More police arrived, detectives. They took statements from all of us. I showed them everything on my phone, all the evidence I'd collected. Dr. Harrison provided his statement about the forged medical documents. Daniel was taken away in handcuffs. As they led him past us, he looked at Maria one last time. "I loved you," he said. Maria's voice was steady when she replied, "No, you didn't. You loved what you thought you could get from us." And then he was gone. The house felt different after they left, quieter, but also lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. Maria and I sat in the living room together. Neither of us spoke for a long time. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she finally said. "I should have seen it. The signs were there." "He was very good at hiding," I said softly, and we both wanted to believe the best of him. "How long have you known?" "Only a few days, since the first note." "The notes?" Maria wiped her eyes. "From the neighbor's kid?" "Yes. Max. He saved my life, Maria. If he hadn't warned me, if I'd kept taking those pills Daniel was giving me—" I didn't finish the sentence. We both knew how it would have ended. "I want to thank him," Maria said. "So do I." The next afternoon, after the police had finished processing the house and we'd given our full statements, I walked next door with Maria. A woman answered, Max's mother, Jennifer. She looked confused when she saw us. "Mrs. Martinez, is everything okay?" "Is Max home?" I asked. "We'd like to speak with him, if that's all right." Jennifer called for Max, still looking puzzled. The boy appeared, his eyes going wide when he saw us. "Max," I said gently, "your mother should hear this too." We all sat in their living room, me, Maria, Jennifer, and Max. The boy looked terrified, probably thinking he was in trouble for sneaking through yards. "Max," I began, I need to tell your mother something, and I need you to know how grateful I am." I told Jennifer everything, about Daniel's plan, about the notes Max had left me, about how he'd overheard Daniel on the phone and had the courage to try to warn me. "He saved my life," I finished. "If he hadn't left those notes, I never would have figured out what was happening until it was too late." Jennifer looked at her son with a mixture of shock and pride. "Max, you did all that?" Max nodded, small and scared. "I know I wasn't supposed to go through the yards. I'm sorry, but I heard him say those things, and I knew Mrs. Martinez was in danger. I didn't know what else to do." Jennifer pulled her son into a tight hug. "You did exactly the right thing. Yes, we'll talk about the yard sneaking later, but Max, you helped someone who needed it. You were brave when it mattered." "You were incredibly brave," Maria added, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved my mother when I couldn't see what was happening right in front of me." Max looked up at me. "Is he gone? Daniel?" "He's gone," I confirmed. "He's been arrested. He won't hurt anyone again." "Good," Max said firmly. "Bad guys shouldn't win." I smiled at him. "No, they shouldn't. And thanks to you, he didn't." The weeks that followed were difficult but healing. Daniel was charged with elder abuse, attempted theft, fraud, and assault. The forged documents, the switched medications, the emails, all of it became evidence against him. His trial was set for several months away, but his lawyer was already talking about a plea deal. Maria filed for divorce immediately. She was devastated, angry, grieving the relationship she thought she'd had. But she was also strong, stronger than she'd realized. "I'm moving out," she told me one evening, "getting my own place. I need to figure out who I am without him." "I understand," I said, "but you know you're always welcome here." "I know, Mom, but I think we both need our space back, our lives back." She was right. As much as I loved my daughter, it would be good to have my house to myself again, to know that every corner, every room was truly mine. Dr. Harrison helped me get my real medications sorted out. Once the sedatives were out of my system, the confusion vanished. The dizziness stopped. I was myself again, clear-headed and strong. I replanted my garden, new flowers, new arrangements, erasing the places where Daniel had sat, where he'd plotted, where he'd smiled while poisoning me. And I kept a watch for notes in my garden tools, even though I didn't need them anymore. 1 month after everything happened, there was a knock on my door. It was Max, holding something wrapped in newspaper. "Hi, Mrs. Martinez," he said shyly. "I brought you something." I invited him in and we sat in the kitchen. He unwrapped the newspaper carefully. Inside was a small potted plant, a young rosebush. "Mom helped me pick it out," he explained. "She said you like roses. I thought, maybe you could plant it in your garden, to remember that good things can grow even after bad things happen." I felt tears prick my eyes. This wonderful, brave child. "It's perfect, Max. Thank you." "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course." "Are you going to be okay? Like really okay?" I thought about it, about everything I'd been through, everything I'd lost and everything I'd survived. "Yes," I said honestly. "I think I really am going to be okay." Max smiled. "Good, because secret agents are supposed to save people. But it's nice when the people stay saved, you know?" I laughed. "I know." After Max left, I took the rosebush out to my garden, found the perfect spot for it, near my patio chair where I could see it every morning. As I dug the hole and settled the plant into the earth, I thought about how much had changed, how close I'd come to losing everything, how my own daughter's husband had tried to destroy me from the inside. But I also thought about the notes that had saved me, about a 10-year-old boy who chose to be brave when he was scared, about a daughter who stood between me and danger without hesitation, about a doctor who believed me when I showed him the truth. I'd almost lost my home, my health, my life. But in the end, what I'd gained was so much more valuable. I'd gained proof that even in the darkest moments, there are people who will fight for you. Sometimes they're people you know, and sometimes they're people you barely knew existed until they left a note in your garden that changed everything. That evening, I sat in my garden as the sun set, watching the sky turn orange and pink. The new rosebush was already settling into its spot, its leaves catching the golden light. My phone buzzed, a text from Maria. "Dinner tomorrow night? My place? I want to show you my new apartment." I smiled and typed back, "I'd love that." Another text came in, this time from Jennifer next door. "Max wants to know if you need any gardening help this weekend. He promises to use the front gate this time." I laughed and replied, "Tell him I could always use a good assistant, and that secret agents are welcome in my garden anytime." I set my phone down and breathed in the evening air, in my garden, in my home, the house I'd built, the life I'd defended, the future I'd saved, mine. Not because I was lucky, not because someone else decided to be merciful, but because a child saw something wrong and decided to act, because I found the courage to investigate, because my daughter chose truth over comfort, because good people still existed in the world. I looked at the fence where Max had squeezed through so many times, leaving his notes, his warnings, his lifeline, and I whispered into the quiet evening, "Thank you." The garden whispered back with the rustle of leaves and the soft perfume of roses, and for the first time in over a year, I felt completely, truly safe, in my home, where I belonged. 6 months later, Daniel pleaded guilty to all charges. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison. The judge noted in her sentencing statement that the systematic planning and premeditation showed a calculated cruelty toward a vulnerable person who had shown him nothing but kindness. Maria rebuilt her life slowly but steadily. She found a therapist, reconnected with old friends, and threw herself into work. She visited me every week, and we were closer than we'd been in years. Max continued his secret agent activities, though now with his mother's knowledge and approval. He started a neighborhood watch program with other kids on the block. They called themselves the Garden Guardians. And me? I lived in my home, tended my garden, and never took a single day for granted. Because I'd learned something important during those dark weeks. Sometimes danger comes from the people closest to you. Sometimes poison is served in a teacup with a smile. But also, sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes it comes in the form of a note written by a child hidden in a garden glove. And sometimes that's exactly enough to change everything.